I'm a 20-year-old female, and I found something devastating on my boyfriend's phone. I'm sick to my stomach and I don't know what to do. Here's exactly what happened. I started dating David at the beginning of February. Only a few weeks after getting out of a 5-year relationship, I was nervous about getting into another one, but we clicked so well that I did not think much more about it. I fell hard and he did too. Things have been wonderful, and we were even considering moving in together at the end of the month. All 4 roommates moved out, and I can't afford the place by myself. He and I have casually spoke about not ever wanting children, and I've never seen him behave oddly around kids in the short time I've known him, so I didn't really see any red flags there. Everything seemed to indicate he had a great head on his shoulders, and we spend almost all our time together. Last week, I came into my room after making us some dinner. He was obviously playing with himself. He quickly shut his phone off, and I played it off like I had no idea what he was doing. Fast forward 2 days ago, I was curious as to why he would try to hide it from me. I don't care if he watches stuff on his phone, and curiosity got the better of me. So, when his phone was unlocked and he left it on the bed, I quickly peeked through his search history. There was a ton of naughty stuff, all the time. All conventional websites and mostly called teen. I didn't think much of it, though it does kind of gross me out, and I kept scrolling. Then I saw some search terms that made my heart drop into my stomach. Little kid pics has been entered around 5 times. I quickly put his phone away and panicked a bit. I had no idea what to think, but my intuition told me there was more to find out. I couldn't imagine someone just randomly getting the urge to look it up. I know enough to know these fetishes develop over a lifetime. So, last night, I peeked through his photos on his iPhone and I was traumatized. There were photos of me taken asleep, of my breast and close-ups, even photos that he's taken while I'd fallen asleep on his chest, and he put my hand down his pants. I felt weirded out and a bit violated by these photos, but it got so much infinitely worse. A bit further up in his photos, I discovered around 24 photos and GIFs of young children. The youngest was probably 5 or 6, engaging in explicit acts, exposing their privates, and even adults engaging with small girls. They all appeared to be downloaded off the internet. I was numb. I was angry. I was devastated. I couldn't think, and I was so disturbed at what I was witnessing. I've never seen this in my life, and I can't get these horrible images out of my head. I scrolled pretty far up and did not really see anything else of children like that, but there were definitely lots of photos of girls who would definitely fall into the teen category. I guess I'm just posting here because I have no idea what else to do. I don't know how to confront him, and I know I must separate from him immediately. But I'm terrified of involving police. Our local police are not very useful, and I don't want to get in trouble. He must have accessed these photos using my home internet. He practically already lives here as well, and was going to help me finance a new lease somewhere else. Not that that gives me any desire to stay with him, but financially, I am ducked. Okay guys, Mr. Reddito here. This is an absolutely crazy story. I thought that was it, but I found an update post, and let me just tell you, it gets even crazier. You're gonna want to stick around to the end to find out the resolution that happens with OP and her boyfriend. Here we go, here's the update. It's been a long night. Thank you all for staying patient. Also, this will be an immensely long post, so buckle up. First of all, I just want to say thank you for the massive outpouring of support and love. I'm still trying to work through all your PMs because I'd like to respond personally to each and every one of you. I've been pretty overwhelmed by the amount of people who have commented and read every last one of your thoughts. I never imagined this post would gain nearly this level of attraction and visibility, and it's my hope if I can provide some description of the course of legal action taken, and what advice I use from you guys. Other unfortunate partners who stumble upon this type of thing. Here we go. I also want to state that for anybody who doubts the validity of my claims, I understand. This is an absolutely ducking insane sequence of events, and as much as I wish I had the energy to make something like this up for some arbitrary karma, I don't. To provide proof, I've sent photographs and identifications and related arrest paperwork to moderators, who are working to verify it now. Yesterday, I was picked up by my best friend Alex around 2:30. We drove around and talked for a while. I went to school and discovered it was closed. My scatterbrain completely forgot about spring break. And then we went back to his house to discuss all the comments you've been leaving and to come up with the course of action. We drank, talked, and after a few hours took a short break from staring at my phone to play some Apex Legends. Alex dropped me back off at my house around 9:30. David was home, in my room, and I immediately noticed how he was exceptionally quiet and distant. He said he had something to admit to me. I prepared him to admit to possessing the photographs, but instead, he told me about how he's taken some photos of me sleeping. He felt really embarrassed about it, and he just did not know how to bring it up. I pretended to be surprised and asked him if he had anything else on his phone he wanted to admit to. He said no. I asked him, "Look me in the eyes and tell me that." And he did. I don't know why I was hoping so badly that he would be honest with me about it, but I really thought he would admit it then and there. Instead, he admitted he has been feeling suicidal the last few months, but did not think he would act on it. He asked me if that changed my perception of him, and I said no. He grew quiet again, and I left to go shower. When I came back, he was getting changed, and I said he was going to walk for a bit and grab some food. It was 10:30 at this point. When he left, I finally lost it and broke down. I grabbed my cat and hugged him and cried and cried and cried. I was tired and just wanted to shut my brain off so badly. I grabbed my phone and dialed a non-emergency RCMP line for my city. Shaking and crying, I explained to the lady on the phone that I've discovered these pictures on my boyfriend's phone. She put me through to the report line, and I spoke to another constable who told me I would be contacted by another officer who would provide more details. I waited for around 10 minutes, and the officer advised me that he would need me to come in and provide a recorded/audio video statement. I asked if I could do it over the phone, and he said no. It must be done in person so that if it goes to court, Crown Counsel has clear evidence that I was not coerced into stating what I witnessed. I don't have my full license yet, and because of the late time, I wasn't able to make it down there on my own via transit. So the constable said he would come pick me up, asked me if David was there and if I could safely leave without arousing suspicion. Luckily, David knows about my close family-like relationship with my best friend. So I made up a lie about how my best friend got in a fight with his dad, and he wanted to talk to me about it. David did not seem to question it, and I waited for the officer to arrive. He called me from a blocked number, and I walked outside and down the block to his SUV. The constable and another officer greeted me. I got in the front seat and we drove to the station. During the ride, I asked him about whether seizing the phone on my own was a good idea. He explained that I've done everything correctly, laying low and getting my thoughts together to take it to the police without notifying David. He said if I've taken David's phone on my own, that it would not have been admissible as evidence in court. They would have returned it back to him and he could have deleted all the evidence since suspicion has been aroused. It was about 11:15 at this point. They placed me in the interview room and I sat and waited for about 20 minutes. The officer came back in and explained the process of the interview, that it would take some time and to be as thorough as possible with my answers. He said we could take breaks and brought some water. He started off by asking me details about my life, where I grew up, past employment, etc. After the portion, he asked me about David, what our relationship was like, whether he was nice and kind to me, and anything else I knew about him. I told him he was sweet, that he's been nothing short of lovely in the time we've been together. But I did express that things have been moving very quickly. He agreed. He then got me to explain how I came upon the photos in question. So I did. Then came the worst part. He asked me to go through, one at a time, the photos I explicitly remembered details of seeing and to describe it in very graphic detail. Example, positions of the children, their ethnicity, and identifying characteristics such as clothing. It was intense, but some grace of God I was able to keep my composure and not burst into tears. And I did provide a clear statement to the officer. He asked me if I would testify in court, and I said I would. The officer left a few times during the interview to discuss with his supervisor more questions to ask during the interview, and the legalities of the seizure they would attempt. The full interview took around 3 hours, including all sitting and waiting. After I've been sitting what felt like an eternity, the officer came in and explained that they felt my interview provided enough reasonable cause to seize his phone and place him under arrest. They explained how the process would go and whether I wanted a no-contact agreement. I said yes, initially, but the officer asked me if it would be easier to have one in regards to sorting out his belongings. That made sense to me, so I chose not to move forward with the no contact. We got in the constable's car and drove down to my house with 2 other officers in 2 vehicles, 3 in total. I told them I was more comfortable in a squad car than standing outside. I didn't want to face him. So they moved me back to the cop car, and I've never felt so anxious in my life. I asked them to be mindful of my cats and not let them get outside. They promised they would make sure of that. About 15 minutes later, I saw them bringing David out in handcuffs. My heart, which has been dissolving in my stomach acid all day, felt completely gone. I curled up in the fetal position in the back of the squad car and waited to be told I could go back inside. After another eternity, my phone died by this point, and I know it's well past 3:30. They came back and explained he was under arrest but being released with the promise to appear in court at a later date. I was told by the officer I could go pack in, and that it would help him find his way back to the place he's been staying previously. The officer gave me a victim service card and a hug, and instructed me to snuggle my cats tightly. That I did a brave thing and to be well. I went back into my house, put Planet Earth on for background noise, and called my other best friend Paige, who's been keeping up with me about this since I sent her my post. We were talking for almost 45 minutes when my door burst open. It was David. He was frantic, his eyes were wild, and he was hyperventilating. My jaw dropped. Officers said they would be escorting him back to his prior residence. I was not all mentally prepared to see him again. Paige asked me if everything was okay, and I told her David just walked through the door. I'd call her back. Immediately, David came to the bed where I was sitting, dropped to his knees, and sobbed violently. He said he did not know I would be here. He just came to grab a couple more of his belongings. He asked me what the cops have asked myself or told me. I lied and said that they had only told me they had suspicion of possession of porn. He sobbed more and more loudly and said, "This isn't me. This isn't me. This isn't who I am," and cried more and more. His body was racked with sobs and he apologized over and over. It was immensely difficult to witness, and I wish I could have told him to get the duck out. But I just sat there immobilized in shock. It was well close to 5 in the morning. I haven't slept or eaten in 48 hours. At this point, my body and brain felt like they were essentially not functioning. David began and said that this has been something he struggled with after developing an intense addiction in his 20s. I asked him if he's ever been abused sexually. He said no. He said he knew how horrible it was to seek these images, but had no inclination or desire to ever touch any children. He's never acted on these thoughts and never would. I asked him why he had never sought treatment before, and he admitted he was terrified of what people would think. He had no idea what resources to access and he felt ashamed. He said his previous suicide attempts in years prior were directly linked to the fact that he considered himself a pedophile. I nodded and I asked him if they would find anything on his phone that would incriminate him. He said yes, they were going to. He admitted there were very explicit photos and I asked him how he even found them. I don't recall we ever got to that, but he promised me he did not use my internet to access it, but I don't really believe that. He apologized to me more times than I can count and asked if I hated him. I told him I wasn't sure that I felt hatred for him, but I was sure of being beyond disappointed in his actions. I told him how terribly I felt betrayed and hurt and violated. I expressed my sadness in what he's done, the innocence of these exploited children, and how he had so much potential to do so much good in the world, and how disappointed this was the route he chose. Then, I heard a loud knock on the front door, and lights outside my house. 3 officers were outside, 2 of whom I recognized from earlier, and they asked me if David was here. I said he was, and they said they were coming to perform a welfare check, because Paige called. I realized I've completely forgotten to text her back and let her know I was okay. Bless her heart. The officers took David outside and they each asked him if they had any cause to worry about his actions tonight, and he promised that they did not. I told them I was okay, that I would finish my discussion with him, and if I had any issues, I had them on speed dial. They just nodded and left. David sobbed and sobbed for what felt like a millennium, and I just sat and, well, endured it. Tears just ran and ran and ran and ran. He said he knew that he was saying was cliche, and that he was sure I expected to hear his great big apology. He said if I thought he was being manipulative, he could understand, but assured me he was at his rock bottom, and wanted me to know how horrible he felt about not only what he's done, but what I go through. I just nodded. There was silence for a long time. I think by this point it was around 8:30. I don't know how long I stared at my TV screen, and that said, "Are you still watching Planet Earth?" But it could have been a lifetime. I had no concept of time or what to do or say, or what was the right way to feel. I think David was either silent or has fallen asleep against my bed. I don't know. I don't care. I was just numb. I would have probably sat like that until I died, but 2 of my 4 cats descended onto my bed and meowed for food. I got up, fed my little critters and cats, and came back to my bed. My brain wasn't capable of thought, so I stared at my TV screen until I passed out around 9. I did not sleep for long because when I woke up and checked my phone, it said 11:30. David was awake and crying still. When he realized I was awake, he sat up and looked at me with immense pain. I just stared at him. He started apologizing and apologizing more. He expressed how his life was over. He had nothing, and nothing that I was his greatest light in life. How he never wanted to lose me, blah blah blah. He expressed how much he cared about me and how he would do anything to win my affection back, to get me to give him a second chance. I shook my head no, and he sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, apologizing nonstop. At this point, I finally asked him to leave. I told him I needed space to sort out my emotions and I need to get some sleep. I asked him if he would be okay. He nodded, grabbed his things, and he said he would get out of my life and not contact me if that's what I wanted him to do. I said nothing. He expressed how much he loved me and again how sorry he was, and that if there was ever any chance of anything happening between us ever again, that he would be there. He said I love you about 10 million times and grabbed his bag and stepped out my front door. I've been laying in bed since and just writing this. I just want this to be over. I just want to move on and figure out how to sort the mess that remains. Also, I think I forgot to add that his court date is set for June. As far as sentencing, if he's found guilty of possession, I believe he could be sentenced to 2 years, and a minimum of 90 days. I'll post updates again if I feel they're important. Otherwise, I'll update again in June when he's been sentenced and let you know what the charges are laid. Thank you all again for support, kindness, and love. I've never in my life experienced such an outpouring of generosity and compassion. I would have been so lost without some of your advice. Now, it's time to sleep. I think this is a horrible thing OP had to go through. Not only did she have to expose the person she apparently loved, but her entire life was crashing down. The one thing that I don't really agree with that OP did though, why in the world did she let David stay there when he got back out of prison? I would have told the cops, hey, you need to take this guy, I need some sleep. I read the comments from the original thread and this one stuck out to me. Oh my gosh, you're so brave and I'm so happy there are people like you in the world. You did the right thing. I'm so sorry for your heartbreak and for everything you're going through. Thank you for your strength and your courage. And the second commenter replied this. I think sitting there while pedo Dave is crying his eyes out for 10 hours is the ultimate bravery. Even as a dude, I don't think I could face someone like that. I'd be so many things and terrified is one of them. Big props to OP's bravery. Guys, let me know if you were in OP's position and you had to go through something this tragic. Let me know what you would do. How would you cope with it? How would you handle it? Drop your thoughts down below. I love reading your opinions. That's all the stories I have for you guys today. I hope each and every one of you have an amazing day. And remember, it's cool to be kind. I'll see you guys tomorrow.